morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Mark Maculada and I am the representative of the Group 4. And today we are going to discuss about the components of special and inclusive education. But before that, let us have first our prayer. Let us bow down our head and feel the presence of our Lord. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Lord, we offer to you our class today. We pray that through your divine guidance, we would learn how to listen attentively to the inputs of our reporters. May we appreciate their effort in imparting their knowledge to us. May we participate actively in the discussions and activity so we could learn more while having fun. May we value each other's contributions as a building block towards harmony and peace. Grant that as we interact with one another, we recognize the fact that all our learning activities should be accomplished for your greater glory. Grant that we recognize you in each of our classmates and teachers. As we leave for home, we pray that you keep us safe from harm and illnesses, and we would be able to apply correctly what we have learned from school. All these we ask in your powerful name. Amen.
So good morning once again. So I will be the first presenter and my topic is all about child find through a pre-referral process. So the referral for evaluation and special education service begins by identifying those students who mostly needing additional needs and those who might be at risk for developmental disabilities. The individuals who mostly notice these needs are those frontliners in early education, such as the guidance counselor, early childhood teachers, primary teachers, and community-based daycare workers. In terms of parents, they basically notice it and seek for consultation with pediatricians and other specialists. So, what is pre-referral process? Having identified that a child has developmental delays, a parent or a teacher could refer them for observation and assessment. According to Halahan et al. In 2014, professional team known as pre-referral team collaborates to determine the reasons of the developmental delays. The pre-referral team is composed of teachers, counselors, administrators, and psychologists. This was corroborated by Taylor in 2009 that provides an assessment model that begins with pre-referral process. An assessment and observation called Norm and Criterion Reference Test identify child that struggles with developmental delays and difficulties. However, before admitting a child who showed difficulties, they shall be first provided essential academic and behavioral support to address noted challenges. In a certain situation wherein a very young student who identifies to have noted challenges and is suspected to be at risk of catching difficulties, they shall undergo community-based screening. Furthermore, child development and social workers use developmental screening tools such as the ECCD or Early Childhood Care and Development Checklists that covers child typical development. The implementation and evaluation of pre-referral will only follow if the program has been designed. Now, what is pre-referral strategies? The use of pre-referral strategies is essential for a pre-referral intervention because it is designed to provide immediate instructional and or behavior management support to a child. According to Hayward in 2013, the use of strategy round down the number of cases referred for special education. This could also lessen the financial resources that could be spent for special education assessment. An example of a pre-referral strategies are the observation of child behavior such as interactions with parents, teachers, and peers. Interview of parents and teachers to gather more information about the child, review of school records, analysis of the child's academic output through error analysis, portfolio assessment, and criterion reference and curriculum-based assessment. McLaughlin and Lewis in 2009, depending on the information obtained, corresponding changes can be made to manage the child's needs, such as modification of the classroom environment. These could be the seating arrangement, group change, and teachers' proximity in class. The pre-referral process has 4 stages. Let us begin first with the initial identification that includes recognition of potential problem, parent or teacher of observation, and lastly, review of school records, classroom observation. On the second stage, we have determination of teaching areas and strategies. This includes small group instruction and direct instruction. The third stage of pre-referral process is implementation of teaching programs, which includes the process of additional in-class or after-class support, modification of classroom environment and behavior, modification of instruction to address potential needs. And number 4, evaluation of teaching program. These include determine effectiveness of programs on learning and behavior. If, despite provisions of additional support, struggles and difficulties persist, then the child is referred for assessment either within the school, if such services are available, or referred to professional for further assessment. What is essential at this point is that the teachers have implemented a variety of approaches and practices to ensure that support is provided before formal assessment.
Good morning, I am Provi Joy Bamboa, and let us proceed to my topic, assessment. Assessment is the process of collecting information about the child's strengths and needs. It uses a problem-solving process that involves a systematic collection as well as interpretation of data gathered, Salvia et al. 2013. As we all know, assessment is a key part of today's educational system. It serves as an individual evaluation system and as a way to compare performance across a spectrum and across populations. Teachers and administrators make instructional decisions based on the assessment result. However, with so many different kinds of assessment, there are also many different organizations available and often required these days. So next is the assessment purposes. So the purpose of assessment is to gather relevant information about students' performance or progress, or to determine students' interest to make judgment about their learning process. Progress monitoring and evaluation of teaching programs is the purpose of which is to determine how effective programs are to assist the inclusive teachers and the special education teacher, Giuliani and Pirangelo 2012. So after receiving the information, teachers can reflect on each student's level of achievement, as well as on specific inclinations of the group to customize their teaching plans. So the variety of assessment methods covers the following: interviews, observation, checklist or rating scales, and tests. So the continuous assessment provides day-to-day feedback about the learning and teaching process. Assessment can reinforce the efficacy of teaching and learning. It also encourages the understanding of teaching as a formative process that evolves over time with feedback and input from students. This creates good classroom rapport, and students' assessment are necessary because throughout the lesson or unit, the teacher might want to check for understanding by using a formative assessment. Next is the methods of assessment. So methods of assessment will vary depending on the learning outcomes to be measured. School psychologists, educational diagnosticians, and other related professionals use a variety of assessment tools to ensure that results are valid and reliable. So the students who are experiencing difficulties in learning may benefit from the administration of a diagnostic test, which will be able to detect learning issues such as reading comprehension problems, an inability to remember written or spoken words, hearing or speech difficulties, and problems with hand-eye coordination. Students generally complete a summative assessment after completing the study of a topic. The teacher can determine their level of achievements and provide them with feedback on their strength and weakness. So for students who didn't master the topic or skill, teachers can use data from the assessment to create a plan for remediation. Teachers may also want to use informal assessment techniques. Using self-assessment, students express what they think about their learning process and what they should work on. Using peer assessment, students get information from their classmates about what areas they should revise and what areas they're good at. Next is the norm reference test. So norm reference refers to standardized tests that are designed to compare and rank test takers in relation to one another. It reports whether test takers perform better or worse than a hypothetical average student, which is determined by comparing scores against the performance results of a statistically selected group of test takers, typically of the same age or grade level, who have already taken their exam. So norm reference scores are generally reported as a percentage or percentile ranking. For example, a student who scores in the 70th percentile performed as well or better than 70% of other test takers of the same age or grade level, and 30% of students performed better. It often uses multiple choice format, though some include open-minded short answer questions. They are usually based on some form of national standards, not locally determined standards on curriculum. So IQ tests are among the most well-known norm reference tests, as are developmental screening tests, which are used to identify learning disabilities in young children or determine eligibility for special education service. Next is the criterion reference test. It is designed to measure student performance against a fixed set of predetermined criteria or learning standards, concise written descriptions of what students are expected to know and be able to do at a specific stage of their education. In elementary and secondary education, criterion reference tests are used to evaluate whether students have learned a specific body of knowledge or acquire a specific skill set. Criterion reference test results are often based on the number of correct answers provided by students, and scores might be expressed as a percentage of the total possible number of correct answers. Next is the informal assessment. So informal or non-standardized assessment, which are considered more authentic and thus can be used primarily to describe performance and inform instruction. So it is spontaneous form of assessment that can easily be incorporated in the day-to-day classroom activities and that measure the student's performance and progress. Informal assessments are content and performance driven. For example, checklist. It is the use of reading inventories where a teacher listens to a child read while counting for accuracy and speed. Authentic assessment is the use of tests, whether formal or informal, is only one method of assessment. So it provides students the opportunity to apply knowledge and skills in meaningful real-world setting rather than in artificial and contrived setting. Dennis et al. 2013. So an authentic assessment usually includes a task for students to perform and a rubric by which their performance on the task will be evaluated. Example of authentic assessment is observation of young students as they interact with family members, peers, and objects in naturally occurring activities across setting and routines. This includes data and information that the teacher collects from daily work with students. Other examples are play-based assessment and portfolio assessment. Lastly is the assessment principles. So the Division for Early Childhood, or DSC, is one of the 17 divisions of the Council for Exceptional Children, the largest international professional organization dedicated to improving educational outcomes for individuals with exceptionalities, students with disabilities, and the gifted. This is an act as a guidance to ensure that the test is useful, acceptable, reliable, and plausible. These values must be taken into account since evaluation is an essential part of the instructional process that decides the level of success of students. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Now let us proceed to the next component, which is placement. Modern schools strives to educate every child who walk through their doors. Classroom teachers and curriculum writers adapt materials and instructional strategies to meet the needs of students of widely varying performance levels. Innovative and responsive instruction benefits a lot of kids, but there are some that need additional support. A student who is identified as having an educational disability requires access to special educational services. After finding a child who has additional needs, we will now know in this stage what is the best placement for that particular child. In determining the educational placement of a child with disability, each public agency must ensure that the placement decision is made by a group of people, including the parents and other people knowledgeable about the child, the meaning of evaluation data, and the placement options. Placement decisions initially occur after a student is comprehensively assessed, determined eligible, and the student's goals and supports are identified. The placement decision is determined at least annually and requires consideration of alternative placements. We have here the continuum of alternative placements. This continuum refers to the entire spectrum of placements where a student's special education program can be implemented. In this continuum, students might be moved to the more restrictive placements only if necessary or return to the least restrictive placement as quickly as possible. General education classroom is the least restrictive environment, thus the most normalized or typical setting according to Gargiulo 2012. It is the one that is composed of students of whom at least 70% are without identified special education eligibility and that utilizes the general curriculum and is taught by an instructor certified for general education and that is not designated as a general remedial classroom. Next is the general education class with related services. It is another option for placement, but child here receives supplementary instructions and services. Next is the general education class with inclusion or co-taught with a special education teacher. In this placement, some special education teachers team with special education teachers to serve children with special needs in an inclusion setting. They may be expected to serve a resource for other management system in physical environment. And then, the general education class with resource center instruction. Resource center helps make full inclusion effective for all students. The inclusion team stresses that self-advocacy is one of the keys to learning. If students know their strengths and weaknesses and can articulate their needs, then they can go on to address them with appropriate assistance. Next is the self-contained special education class in a general education. Unlike standard classrooms with a large number of peers, self-contained classrooms are typically smaller set with a fewer number of students. It is created to help foster enhanced support for students with special needs. Self-contained rooms are generally comprised of about 10 students with unique struggles who are most commonly instructed by a lead teacher with a certificate in special education. Self-contained classrooms will also have at least one paraeducator who provides instructional support under the guidance of the classroom teacher. Due to recent curriculum shift, some self-contained rooms cater to the diverse needs of students, such as those coping with autism spectrum disorder. Moving up in the placement continuum, some students who need more intensive instruction and supports are educated in a special education class in a special educational school. And when the child cannot succeed in any of the available regular setting, the team may consider residential placement. Residential treatment centers are places where education and mental health services generally have equal importance in a child's day. Lastly, we have the home or hospital program. The purpose of home and hospital instruction is to provide instruction to a student with multiple disability in a student's home or in a hospital or other residential health facility, excluding the state hospitals. And the primary outcome of home and hospital program instruction is to maintain a student at the student's former level of performance while recovering from the disability so as not to jeopardize the student's future performance upon returning to the regular day class or the alternative education program. Classrooms that successfully include students with disabilities are designed to welcome diversity and to address the individual needs of all the students, whether they have disabilities or none.
I'm Heidi P. Villa Gonzalo, and now let's proceed to our next topic, which is accommodation and curricular modification. Students with disabilities and additional needs who are studying in an inclusive general education classroom may need accommodation in the form of instructional support and other supplementary services. Others who need more intensive support are provided with curricular modifications. Students with disability need accommodation or modification in their educational program in order to be successful in school. Accommodation. Accommodation or support provided to students to help and gain full access to class and instruction without altering the curriculum standards and competencies expected and to demonstrate accurately what they know. When accommodation are provided in a general education classroom for children with disabilities, barriers are removed from accessing education. As a result, children can work around the effect of their disabilities. Example of accommodation are altering instruments, toys, or materials, changing the room during specific activities, providing time extension or allowances to test and task, and changing response formats and worksheets. According to Beach 2010, accommodation may be provided both during assessment and instruction, depending on the learning profile and needs of a child, and may vary in terms of presentation accommodation, response accommodation, setting accommodation, and scheduling accommodation. Presentation accommodation. Presentation accommodation, children with disabilities may need specialized presentation formats, especially those with sensory impairment, so they can learn the same context alongside typically developing peers. Presentation accommodation changes to the way in which instructional or test content is presented to students. Example of accommodation in presentation, the learning needs of a child is visual support If the learning needs of a child is visual support, an example of accommodation is minimize visual direction, visual cues using color-coded text or highlighting key information, use a large print materials, use of the sign language, videos with closed captioning. If the learning needs of a child is auditory and comprehension support, the example of accommodation, read aloud by a peer, audiobooks, digital text that reads aloud or gives definition of words, text-to-speech software, highlighting or color coding. If the learning needs of a child in listening and focusing, example of accommodation, advanced organizer, explicit verbal or visual cues, physical prompts, repeat or clarify direction and important information, note-taking, support, or copy of direction. Response accommodation. Response accommodation allows students with disabilities and additional needs a variety of ways to complete assignments, written tests, performance tasks, and other activities. Providing such instructional and assessment supports allow them to access the same learning experience as other students in a general education classroom. Example of response accommodation for the students with disabilities and additional needs. If the learning needs of a child is written difficulty, example, errors in spacing, visual perceptual or spatial orientation, illegible handwriting, example of accommodation, different size, diameter of pencil, marker or crayon, pencil or pen grip, finger spacer, handwriting template, guide on the student's desk, visual cues on paper, different types and sizes of paper. Of the learning needs of a child is written expression difficulty, the example of accommodation, electronic dictionary with spell check, online dictionary, word professor with spelling and grammar check, written cues cards, list of sight words, writing templates, outline, and graphic organizer. If the learning needs of a child is math difficulty, calculator, complete models and manipulatives, visual presentation, problem guides, problem solving guide. And continuation is graphic organizer, special paper graphing paper for computation. Setting accommodation. Setting accommodation changes in the location or conditions of the educational setting or environment may be necessary for students who need support in terms of behavior, attention, and organization of space and materials. Accommodation in a setting may allow a child who gets easily distracted to work in the quiet corner of the classroom in his own study car so that he will not be sidetracked by environmental stimuli. Or a child who is still unable to read fluently may be allowed to take a silent reading comprehension test in other room with a supervising adult just so she could hear herself read aloud, which helps her better understand the story. Scheduling accommodation. Changing time allotment, schedule of tasks, assessment, and management of time are some types of scheduling accommodation. Scheduling accommodation is allowable amount of time or the time of day instruction or assessment. Students with slower ability in processing information and direction, well as with focusing issues, may need this type of accommodation. Some example of scheduling accommodation. First, extending time for assignments and assessment. Second, providing breaks in between tasks. Third, providing a visual schedule or a checklist of individual responsibility. Fourth, providing predictable routines and procedure. And last, providing an electronic device with alarms and cues. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I am Sheila and Alay. Now, let's proceed to our next topic, which is modification. Curriculum modification is an educational strategy that allows special needs students to have better access to information and resources are provided for a student with significant or severe disabilities where content expectations are altered. The performance outcomes are changed in a relation to what are expected to typical developing students of the same age. When instruction and assessment are modified, a student with a disability is still given the right to access the same learning opportunities as other students in general education class, but the tasks are more respectful and appropriate to the student abilities and needs. Curricular modifications do fundamentally alter or lower expectations or standards in instructional level, content, or performance criteria. Curricular modification provides students meaningful and productive learning experiences. Modification, grading, and credit may be different, giving the student hints or clues to correct responses on assignments or tests. Modifications. In modification, they practices the changes lower reduce learning expectation. In modification, they can increase the gap between achievements of the students with disabilities and grade level expectations. A modification may result implications that could adversely affect a student throughout his or her educational career. In modification, they may have an intended consequence of reducing a student's opportunity to learn critical content. Some example of modifications: requiring a student to learn less materials. Second is reducing assignments or assessments to make them easier. Third one is reducing assignments or assessments so the student only needs to complete the easiest problem or items. The last one is giving the student hints or clues to correct responses on assignments or tests. What are the differences between accommodation and modification? In classroom instruction, accommodation can help kids learn the same materials as their peers. This allows them to meet the same expectation. A student with dyslexia, for example, might listen to audio version of a book, but it's still the same book that the rest of the class is reading. Likewise, a student who has trouble focusing might get seated next to the teacher but still has to do all the regular class assignments. In modification, kids who are far behind their peers may need changes to the curriculum they learning. These are called modification. For example, a student could be assigned shorter or easier reading assignments or homework that different from the rest of the class. Kids who receive modification are not expected to learn the same materials as their classmates. In class tests, accommodation for testing can be different from those used for testing. For example, using spell check might help a student with writing difficulties take note during class. However, it wouldn't be appropriate during weekly spelling tests. At the same time, the student might benefit from having extra time to complete the spelling test or using a keyboard if the physical act of writing is difficult. While in modifications and testing tests often means that a student can cover less materials or materials that is less complex. For example, a spelling test may require the class to study 20 words. However, a student with modification might only have to study 10 of them, or there might be two different lists of spelling word with a modification. What the student is tested on is different. The difference between accommodation and modification in standardized testing. In accommodation, statewide tests allow some accommodations like extra time or taking a test on a computer. It's best if these are the same. Accommodations a child uses to take class tests. In modification, some students take what called an alternate assessment. This includes modifications to the irregular test. Question might be fewer or not cover the same materials as the standard exam. Also, the results are interpreted differently. Before you agree to alternate assessment, find out what the impact will be on your child's academic and work future. The difference of accommodation and modification in PE, music, and art class. Accommodation for special classes like PE, music, and art can be helpful for some kids. These are similar to accommodations in the classroom. Kids might get extra time to learn to play an instrument, or they may be allowed to complete an art project at different format. In modification, sometimes an assignment in the class PE, music, or art in unreasonable for your child. When this happens, a modification may be made. For example, the PE teacher might reduce the number of laps a student needs to run. The music teacher might not require a child to learn how to read music.
Good morning to each and everyone. I am Irene D. Kay Kamsa. So let us proceed to our lesson. Parent involvement. When we say parent involvement, it is when parents participate in school event or activities and teachers provide learning resources or information about their students' grades. Like for example, there have a activity in school that the teachers were going to invite your parents to attend the activities or event, and your parents actively participate on that activities or events. So that is an example of the parents' involvement. Parent involvement, another component of an inclusive and special education, is parent involvement. It has long been established that parents' information in education, planning, and management of the children with disabilities and additional needs is essential, as they are the primary caregivers and have direct influence on their children. This is anchored on Bronfenbrenner's human ecological theory, which states that there are 5 environmental systems that comprise a child's social context. So, Bronfenbringer's is a human ecological theory. So, according to him, there are 5 environmental systems, which are the microsystem, the mesosystems, the the exosystems, the microsystems, and the last is the chronosystems. Oh. For the purposes of this book, focus is given on the microsystems where the child and his or her family belong, along with peers, school, and the immediate community and neighborhood. Within this microsystem, a child has direct interaction with parents, teachers, peers, and others. Like for example, when a child is able to actively form social relationships with other and child in ballot class. Like what I'm said lately, the the example of the microsystems is when when the students can direct interaction with their parents. Yes. While the mesosystem refers to the linkages or relationships between microsystem, such as the connections between family experiences and the school experiences, and between family and peers according to Sunstruck 2011. So the example of the mesosystems is when a child's mesosystems might be home and the school. The division of early childhood of the Council of Exceptional Children, or DEC, expose the use of family-centered practices in the assessment and the interaction of young children. Tumbled 2002, cited in Kirk et al. 2015, provided the principles of a family-centered model. So according to Kirk et al., he provided the principle of the family-centered model. The number 1 is honors the family's choice by changing the power relationship between professional and families. The number 2 is abandons a pathology orientation and adopts a strength orientations. And number 3, where the entire family becomes the unit of support and not just the children with a disability and the child's mother. In this way, the whole family is provided support, capitalizing on the child and family members' strength and resources, not on their deficit and needs. Teachers and administrators may also be guided by these principles when communicating and collaborating with parents and families of students with disabilities. Parent involvement has been found to be directly related to academic achievement and improvement in the school performance of children. Educational support and collaboration with teachers have been found to promote child success in school according to Rescli and Christensen 2009. Moreover, programs for children with disabilities became more effective and successful when children and families are involved. Newman 2004, cited in Hayward 2013.
Hi everyone, I am Janelle Bizarro Pedrola, and let's go to our next topic. And our next topic is all about homeschool communication. Homeschool communication having established the critical role of parents in a student's developmental and academic progress and achievements. It is essential that there is a close home and school collaboration and communication to establish partnership, problem solving, two-way communication, and shared decision making. So the first is the parent-teacher conference. Our face-to-face meeting held between parent and teacher. Conducting such meeting is necessary to parents and students with disability and additional needs will be able to share with their children's backgrounds, strength, and abilities, history of difficulties and practices they have been implementing at home, as well as intervention done with other specialties. Example of this parent-teacher conference is the PTA, or the Parent-Teacher Association, which the teacher and parent they met every month for their conference, and the teacher will be, or should I say, the teacher will tell to the parents that if what their behavior of the students inside the classroom. One best practice is hold a meeting with parents at the beginning of this school year as part of goal setting with disability. In this way, both parents and teachers can set expectation for this year and agree on goal and objective for the child. And the second is written communication. Homeschool communication may also be conducted through written messages, such as the use of homeschool communication notebook, where teacher and parents write homework assignment, the student's behavior in the classroom, as well as progress of program goal. Written communication may be time-consuming, but some parents prefers this form of collaboration as the messages are documented. The next is digital communication. According to Olmsted 2013, stated that the study that found in the parents and teacher perceived technology as an effective tool to promote parent involvement, and thus devalue its use of communication. Because it is instant and real-time, parent and teacher are immediately able to receive messages and updates about the student. However, drawbacks can also occur, such as when both parties are not mindful of parameter in the communication. Hence, it is necessary that parties agree on certain boundaries in order to be respectful of everyone's times and personal space. Advantages and disadvantages of digital communication for teaching well-being. Digital communication has many advantages over traditional form of communication, facilitating timely online information exchange and immediate feedback between parents and teacher. For example, it is also make it easier to intervene in pupils' learning and behavioral problem at an early stage, and thereby to improve study outcome, according to Carr et al. 2015. Complementing the positive outcome among pupils, Effective and frequent two-way communication support positive in partnership among parents and teachers in both receive information about what is going on at school and at home by 2018. Digital communication could also encourage parents living separately to participate in school activities, both being able to access the digital platform according to Pulse and Calmus 2015. And it allows parents and teachers to communicate at time that suit both parties. Other advantages include easy information storage and being able to communicate with the entire school community simultaneously by according to Ramis 2001, Pulse and Calmus 2015, as well as enhancing work satisfaction, motivation, and pedagogical atmosphere among teachers by allowing continuous parental support and their daily work with pupils by Scorpner 2010, D. Pablos Pons et al. In 2012, and Olsdam and Nuge 2013. However, communication between parents and teachers is not always seamless. Given the limited expertise in digital communication among teachers, the lack of time during the school day, and the chances of being misunderstood problem may well arise. Digital communication lack exact rule. It is time consuming and it allows teachers from school to home, thereby blurring boundaries between work and leisure, according to Ager 2011, Pulse and Calmus 2015. The idea of always being available and within reach may seriously affect teacher management of working time and work-related stress and consequently teacher well-being, according by Squalvik and Squalvik 2011. Moreover, experiences of not being trusted or being criticized by parents may cause anxiety and feelings in inadequacy among teachers, according to Skalvik and Skalvik 2011. Consequently, good communication skills are needed to prevent unnecessary conflict with parents and to build a positive partnership, mutual respect, and trust among the families by Epstein 2013. The teacher required pedagogical sensitive when pondering upon whether the digital communication is the appropriate way to contract parents, especially when the delicate matter need to be discussed. It should also be remembered that parental opportunities and competences with regard to the use of technology depends on age, education, income, and cultural background. Poor language skills may be barrier, resulting in unequal communication opportunities. Schools should ensure that all parents understand the information they receive, according to Carr et al. 2015. Digital communication also demands emotional and writing competence, given that misunderstanding occur more especially than face-to-face communication, according to Pulse and Calmus 2015. And the next is homeschool contract. It contains an agreement between teacher and parents regarding behavioral and academic goals for students with disability. Just like informal contract, this written agreement between teachers, parents, and students in a specific objectives and corresponding reinforcement or rewards when they are met. Example of this homeschool contract is just like in CMC. All the freshmen are required to bring their guardians to sign the contract or waiver for them to know the guidelines and the grading system of the said institution. So that's all.
Now, we have come to our last topic. This is the other ways to involve parents. A parent can help their child because they have the strength, abilities, intuitive knowledge, and the commitment. They are the advocates of their own children. Parent education training workshops and parent support group are several opportunities that a school can provide to maximize parent involvement. What is parent education? Parent education could be in the form of providing seminars and workshops the parents to equip them with a better understanding of their child's disability and accompanying strength, uniqueness, as well as specific techniques and strategies that they can practice at home. This can be done in a regular basis, few hours, or quarterly basis. Now, what is parent support groups? This is helpful as parents are able to ask other parents about tips and techniques to work with their children. Parents should be empowered so that they can participate in planning and organizing parent support groups. To summarize the topic we have presented, we have discussed to you the components of inclusive and special education that includes pre-referral, assessment, placement, accommodations, curricular modifications, and parent involvement. Across these components, a team approach is highly recommended where each member, the child, parents, general education teacher, special education teacher, therapist, and other specialists coordinate and collaborate in planning and making decisions for the child with disabilities. Again, on behalf of my group mates, I am Mark Brian Maculada, and this is the Chapter 4, the components of inclusive and special education. Good day, everyone.
I'm holding on your rope, got me 10 feet off the ground. And I'm hearing what you say, but I just can't make a sound. You tell me that you need me, then you go and cut me down. But wait, you tell me that you're sorry, did I think I